Hi guys, Charlie here and welcome back. Sorry it's taken a little bit of a while since the second lesson. I've gone on to learn that editing videos for YouTube is quite time consuming, so I found a bit of time and here we go, moving on to lesson number 3. Now, for those of you that haven't already checked out lesson number 1 or 2 and you're not sure about where to find the notes on the piano or guitar fretboard or how the major scale is created, go check that video out first and come back and watch this one afterwards. If you've got all your stuff down from the previous lessons or you know about your major scale, then let's go. In this video, we're going to be talking about chords, so major chords, minor chords, augmented and diminished chords. These are all chords that you might be familiar with. I know certainly a lot of guitarists, including myself when I was younger, we learn all these chord shapes, but we don't really have a Scooby-Doo about why these are these chords. So why is a C major a C major? Why is a D minor, and so on and so forth. So let's get into it and let's understand why these notes are, or these chords are what they are. Starting with the piano and starting with the C major scale, simply because it's nice and easy, no sharps and flats as always. C major scale, tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Starting from the note C, we've got C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. And what we need to do now is we need to name each degree of this scale. So the first note we're going to call the root note. So in the key of C, C is the root note. The next note, D, that's the major second. The next note, E, that's the major third. The next note, F, that's the perfect fourth. And the next note, G, the perfect fifth. The next note, A, is the major six. The next note, B, is the major seven. And the last note, C again, is again the root note, one octave higher. So essentially what we've done here is we've just given each degree of the scale a number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But the first one we call the root note. And then we decide whether they're, or we don't decide, we call them major or perfect depending on the position of them. So the major second, the major third, they're always major from the major scale. The fourth and the fifth are always perfect, and that's due to the sound of them when we played against the root note. They're quite strong sounding, so we call them perfect. The major six and the major seven, again, always called the major six and major seven in a major scale. Okay, so nice and simple. Now the next thing to do is we take certain degrees of the scale and we play them all at the same time to create a chord. And the first type of chord we're going to talk about is known as the triad chord shape. And we've got a major triad, a minor triad, a diminished triad, and an augmented triad. And they're four different types of chords played with 4 different types of intervals. Let's have a look at the major chord to start with. So the C major chord, from the C major scale, we need to play the root note C. At the same time as playing the root note C, we need to play the major third E. And at the same time as playing the major third, we need to play the perfect fifth G. And those 3 notes, when played on top of each other, create a major triad. C major in this instance. Okay, really familiar chord shape. On the piano, it's just one white note, miss a white note, miss a white note. Just all the 3 white notes, missing one every time. C major chord, C major triad. A couple of things about triads. We can have as many of each of those notes as we want. So for example, I could play C, E, G, and then I might want to put another C down here in the bass. It's still a triad. I'm now playing 4 notes, but I'm playing the C twice. That's fine, it's still a triad chord. Maybe I want to grab, let's say, maybe I want to grab another E up here. It's still a triad chord. I'm now playing C, E, G, and then E again up high. So 2 major thirds. Still 3 notes. I'm playing 2 major thirds, but there's still 3 notes. The next thing, really important, is that these are root inversion triads, and that means that we want to try and keep the root note in the bass. So we're going to keep, in this instance, the note C as the lowest note of the chord. If we don't do that, then the chord is known as an inversion, and we'll talk about those later on. Okay, so that's the major triad, the root, major third, and the perfect fifth. The first, third, and fifth degree from the major scale, played at the same time. The next type of chord is the minor chord, the minor triad. And what we have to do to get the minor triad is we take the major third and we flatten it and it becomes a minor third. So the note E, the third degree of the C major scale, becomes E flat. And now we're going to play C, E flat, and G. And straight away you can hear a sadder quality to that chord. And the cliche is that the major chord is happy and the minor chord is sad. And it works. As much of a cliche as it is, you can hear a happiness and a sadness between those 2 chords. So we've only moved 1 note, and that is the major third. We've taken that major third and we've flattened it by 1 semitone to a minor third, and we've created a minor chord. Again, the same thing applies. We always need to keep the root note in the bass. A minor triad. The next one we're going to look at is the diminished triad. So for this, we're going to take our minor triad, but this time we want to flatten the fifth as well. So we've already got our flattened third in it, we've already got our root note, but we have a perfect fifth here, and we want to lose that and we're going to flatten it. So we're going to take the G, and we're going to go down to G flat. Definitely a bit more tension in that chord. So that's the diminished triad. In this instance, C diminished. All of these chords are in C at the moment. Okay, so in this case, C, root note, E flat, minor third, G flat, flat 5. And the fourth chord we're going to look at is the augmented triad. And for this, we're going to keep our C root note, our major third E, and this time we're going to sharpen the fifth. So instead of playing the G, we're going to play the G sharp. And this is an augmented triad. Okay, so there's our 4 chord types. Let's plot those on the guitar fretboard. Okay, so we're probably all familiar with our standard C major chord shape. This diagonal shape which starts on the 3rd fret on the A string and it moves diagonally all the way down. Probably one of the first chords, if not the first chord, that you may have learned on the guitar. The C major chord. Let's have a look at the notes. So first of all, let's bring up our guitar fretboard diagram. And the notes as I play them. The root note, C, which is the lowest note we're playing in the chord because we're not playing the open E string on this chord. The next note down, which is the 2nd fret on the D string, is the note E. That's the major third. Then we're playing the open G string, of course G being the perfect 5th. And now we're playing the 1st fret on the 2nd string, the B string, which is again the note C, so another root note there. And then finally we're playing the open E string, which is the note E again, so another major third. So in this chord we're playing root, major third, perfect 5th, root, major third. C major chord, or C major triad. Let's have a look at the minor triad. Now the minor triad is quite difficult to play in this position, not least because we have an open E string, and the only way we're going to get an E flat, a minor third, is to tune the string down, which isn't always practical. So I'm going to move up to this chord shape. Now let's have a look at the notes in this chord shape, and for anyone who's curious, yes, it looks exactly like an A minor chord, but shifted up 3 frets, and then I'm putting a bar across the 3rd fret. The first note, same note again, is the note C, the root note. Now we've got the 5th fret on the D string, which is the perfect 5th, G. And then the 5th fret on the G string, sorry, which is again the note C, 1 octave higher than the root note we started with. And now we've got this E flat on the B string, the 4th fret, and that's our minor third. That's what's given us our sort of sadness to the chord. And then finally, because my first finger is barring, I'm also playing the note G on the E string, another perfect 5th. So I'm playing root, 5th, root, minor third, 5th. And yes, of course, if we take that minor third and we shift it up 1 degree, it becomes a major third. So if I play this chord, which looks like the A major chord, then I'm playing C major and C minor by flattening that third. It's amazing the difference it makes just by flattening 1 note or sharpening 1 note. Okay, so we've got our minor chord. Now we need to flatten the 5th degree in order to make it diminished. So I've got a 5th here and I've got a 5th on the E string. Now for this particular chord, I'm not even going to worry about playing the high E string because it's a little bit difficult to try and flatten that note with 1 bar. It is possible, but it's time consuming and you're not going to do it very often in the middle of a gig. So we've got to take our 5th, which is this one here, and flatten it. And you can see now the notes that I'm playing within that chord are root, flat 5, root 1 octave higher, flat 3. Diminished chord. And finally, let's take a look at the augmented triad. And in this instance, I'm going to play a bit like our major chord, but this time I'm going to sharpen the 5th, so it needs to come up. So I'm going to refinger it with my little finger sharpening that 5th. Maybe a little bit easier to play in this position as well, because I can just grab the open G string and just finger it on the 1st fret to make the G sharp. But again, I'm being careful not to play the E string. So there's our augmented triad. Now, as a way of practicing these chords, what I'd advise you do is take all the chord shapes that you're familiar with, and I'll post a PDF link in the description of this video. Sorry, can't speak. And take all the chords you know, or look at the chords on the sheet posted, and then look at your guitar fretboard, which hopefully you've drawn out. If you haven't drawn out, then grab one off the internet, and look at the notes within each of those chords and see how they correspond to the scale. So for example, if you take a D major chord, and we're probably all very familiar with this triangular D major shape here, again probably one of the first chords that you've learnt on a guitar, and take a D major scale and look at the notes within here, and you should see that they are the root, the third and the fifth of the D major scale. Take the E major chord and you should see that you only got the root, the third and the fifth of the E major scale. Take an E minor chord and you should see that you've got the root, flattened third, so in other words the G sharp becomes G, flattened third and fifth of the E major scale. We flatten the third. And do the same thing for all your chords, and that way you can start to maybe find your own chord shapes, or look at all the different chord shapes you know. You can even look at these bar chord voicings up here, which you might be familiar with, both major and minor, and start to understand what the notes are within those chords in terms of roots, thirds and fifths, or roots, minor thirds and fifths, or flat threes, flat fives and whatever else it might be. And yeah, just become familiar with them, and start to understand those notes within the chords, and it makes a huge difference knowing what it is that you're playing like that. And it will become more obvious as to why that makes a difference in the next lesson, because we're going to take the major scale and we're going to harmonise it, which gives us a sequence of major and minor and diminished chords across a major scale, which we can use all together. We can use them for our own songwriting purposes, or we can use them for transcribing purposes, and it's a real eye-opener, and it's yeah, it really changed my life when I learnt that for the first time. It suddenly, all of these chords being thrown into different orders kind of suddenly made sense. So tune in again for the next video lesson for that, but in the meantime keep practicing and I'll see you then.